Here we go. Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and I'm so pleased you've joined me for today's show. Welcome back to My Life as a Landlord podcast, where we explore the realities of rental property ownership and tenant management with industry experts and entrepreneurs from around the globe. Today's episode features a real estate agent, property manager, global investor with unique perspectives from his journey spanning from Dominican Republic, Canada, and the U.S. Midwest. Joining us from Montreal is Giancarlo Carangelo. Giancarlo, thanks for joining us. Hi.
Hello, hello, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is kind of fun. I love it that you're also cross-border. In
Yeah.
fact, you're not only are you US and Canada, you're Dominican Republic, but tell us how that all started. I mean, start wherever you'd like. You're just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in real estate one way or another for a decade now. Ultimately, I became a property manager before becoming an investor and a landlord myself. And I started off investing in my own backyard here in Montreal before branching out and exploring other opportunities. And it started with like the Dominican Republic, for example, because I had traveled there and I fell in love with the country, figured out, let me see if I could get informed, see how I could get involved with real estate one way or another in this country. Educated myself on it. It was a lot more feasible than I had thought, and then we had made some investments in there, newly developed condos, and then it's been all downhill since there.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it's fun because talking with you, I'm learning that you've got different tenant avatars, right? It depends on, that the tenant avatar aspect, a lot of landlords don't think about because if you've got one thing, you've got single family homes and that's all you do, well, your tenant avatars is a long-term tenant, it might be family, might be whatever. But if you're doing a mix of things like Airbnbs or, multifamily, I mean, there's all kinds of tenant avatars. Do you have a favorite tenant avatar? Because you've worked with a lot more than I have.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, by nature, I'm a buy and hold type person,
Okay.
long-term rental type person, I think, and multifamily properties, I think, is really my favorite, but they're all exciting avenues, but my niche really is buy and hold long-term multifamily. This is where I really could say I enjoy it the most.
Fantastic. Well, you've done this a long time with property management and awkward conversations, not just with tenants and advisors and others. What advice would you have for landlords when it comes to, let's talk about tenant screening. That seems to be a
Right.
big pain point. Let's talk about tenant screening. Yeah.
When it comes to like my tenant screening process in particular, I'm very, very thorough. Every time I talk to a landlord or an investor, I ask them, well, when do you think the screening process with a tenant starts? 9 out of 10 times they'll say, well, when they submit the application. And in my humble opinion, the screening process with a potential tenant starts from the minute they phone to inquire about the unit that's for rent, right? So
Mm.
whether it'll be myself, my property manager, or a rental agent that we're working with on the team, I have everyone understand the importance of asking questions. Obviously, we are looking for a specific type of avatar. We are looking for a specific type of, fit for that unit and for our, portfolio as well. So when we get the call, it's important whether it's me or the people that work in my team, we have to control the call, and we control the call by asking questions. These questions they're not that complicated. You know, where are you currently living? How long have you been there? Why are you moving? Where are you currently working? How long have you been there? Right? So these questions, what they basically do is they start the screening process right away. Because if I'm speaking to a potential tenant who's lived at three different addresses in the last 2 years and worked at three different jobs,
Mm.
chances are there's a lack of stability here,
Hmm.
right? So that's truly when the screening process starts. And it surprises me sometimes how many, landlords, more so beginner green landlords, right? That they think that way. But when I kind of like flip the switch on them, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. It does. You weed out the bad apples before even showing the unit.
It's interesting you say that, and especially with changing rental markets. You're in Montreal at the moment, I'm in British Columbia, but there is supply and demand. I'm finding that right now there's a lot of multifamily units that are coming online that started either during COVID or just after COVID. And so you've got sometimes oversupply. I know that's happening in Toronto, it's happening in Vancouver, it's certainly happening in our little spot here in British Columbia. It's happening in Hawaii, right? There's an oversupply, and as a result now, you've got sort of a tenant desert. You're waiting multiple months, but it's not always like that. And so, most of the time, I think you and I talked about having a vacancy, but having one vacancy and maybe 20 applicants. And and then we're the bad guy, right? Because we have to pick the most qualified applicant. And so sometimes the word discrimination can be thrown out, and it's like, really? We're like, how do you brace knowing that that could be part of the conversation?
Right. Well, I mean, we had spoken a little bit before, and I had said, it's about the choice of words
Hmm.
when it comes to screening the applicants and choosing the right applicant. It's about the choice of words because some people could automatically take it in a bad light. So if I have a certain sized unit, which I think is only good for one person,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would have to gently explain to the tenant, like, unfortunately, with the size of this unit and for liability purposes, I don't think having, two people plus a dog in this is the smartest idea. Unfortunately, I think it would be more fit for one person or an
Mm-hmm.
individual. And I think that when it comes to like the discrimination aspect of it, obviously here in Montreal, it's very, very, very controlled and regulated, our rental board.
Mm-hmm.
So any little thing that we may not deliver properly can be, used to our disadvantage. But when I'm looking for a specific type of person or a specific type of tenant, I will be able to, number one, mention it in my ads. Ideal unit for professional individual, ideal unit for a small family.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if it's a two-bedroom unit, then small family means three people and not two parents and three kids. And then we're going to shove all three of the kids in the second bedroom, cram them in there. So, it's definitely the choice of words. And I think that that helps eliminate, again, the people looking that are not within the portfolio, that were not in the profile of the tenants.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if I mention small family and we have a family of six looking, well, then they'll understand, okay, this probably won't fit all six of us.
Mm-hmm. I I've been questioned before as well in tenant screening. I mean, it happens. It happens in business in general, no matter what, not just real estate, but in business in general. And I find that the systems, especially for, onboarding tenants, screening tenants and things like that, if you have your system set up and every single tenant goes through this same system the whole time,
Mm.
that's another way you can brace it, is set up your system so that no matter who comes in the front door,
Yeah,
you're doing the exact same thing for every single person, and they're what I call deal breakers. A lot
yeah,
of in British Columbia, we are not we really don't want smoking tenants in our units, and that's something that we can screen out and go, you know what, we're not
yeah.
going to rent to smokers. But do we have, right? And so anyway, but it goes through the whole system. So that's one strategy we do. But I like your choice. I like your choice of words, the word play. I think that's pretty good too. That's pretty good too. So let's um let's talk a little bit more about tenants, especially you've screened them, you've worked really hard to get them in, you're working hard to engage with them, with your property managers, and keeping great tenants is a skill. I think it's a gift, actually. How do you keep your good tenants around?
Well, I think when it comes to keeping good tenants, adding value to their unit in the form of a service or a product can be something that'll help retain them.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if we do a lot of this too, where, every year I handle a pretty large portfolio. So every year we have a list of, okay, who are the good tenants and monitor their responses. If they're telling us that they're looking to move. Well, find out why. Why are you looking to move? You'll be surprised how many times it's something that they're lacking that they think they won't be able to obtain in the specific unit.
Hmm.
So, for example, it could be, if we're talking about a fairly older multifamily building and say, well, the lack of AC. Well, then every year we have a budget reserved and allocated for maintenance and capital expenditures. So we always negotiate with tenant. Well, if I could solve this problem for you, would you consider staying? One
Mm-hmm.
tenant, for example, just this year actually wanted to move because he didn't have any storage. I said, well,
Mm.
we have storage lockers downstairs. I could create you a storage space, reserve you a storage space. And sure enough, he'd renewed for his term for another 12 months. In business, as well as real estate, being a landlord, property management, it'll cost you more to onboard a new tenant or to keep a client, let's say, or in this case, tenants, but it'll cost you more to onboard a new person than it will to retain one. So if we look at the math and we do the numbers, and I have a vacancy coming up that's at $1,600 a month, let's say. We put it up for rent and it might stay vacant for 30 days or 60 days. We just don't know. Then it finally rents after 60 days, and then I have to pay a commission to my rental agent. So that's considered not in 3 months vacancy because they take a 1 month rental commission in this case. I do the math, $1,600, $4,800 in 3 months, or do I install a $2,800 air conditioning to retain the tenant?
Pretty
You know,
simple.
pretty simple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty simple math. Plus, you have a raving fan then, right? The tenant is
exactly.
very likely going to stay because now they've got, well, and they feel that they're being listened to. It's way more engaging,
Right.
right? Which is cool. No, I like it when we've got numbers like that. That's very cool. So, well, as anyone in real estate, renovations is part of the journey, whether you want it to be or not. It is part of the journey. I understand you've been throwing some curveballs in some of your renovations. Tell us about some.
I think doing your due diligence, your proper due diligence before embarking on a renovation is number one. And it comes back to I keep mentioning educating yourself, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't know what we don't know, and that's okay. I think that when it comes to renovations, again, it's a numbers game. So we need to project financials and we need to do it with clear-cut numbers. No numbers that are in the air. Well, yeah, I think it'll cost $5,000 to repaint and, change some light fixtures, but then finally it costs $6,500, right? So I think that the number one mistake that I see people, and I have done myself during renovations, is underestimating it and under evaluating the cost of the renovations. Right. I had a perfect example myself where I wanted to convert a duplex into for a third residential living unit. And throughout this year-long process of me putting together architectural plans and communicating with the city and getting contractors in there to evaluate, what I had originally thought would have costed 100,000 to renovate ended up costing like 160, 165 at the end of it. And then I was forced to pivot the plan. I was forced to change all my plans, think of another plan where I could use this space to generate revenue, so on and so forth. But that mistake that I had made there was I had completely underestimated the value and the cost of the renovations, right? So I always recommend to people before you go on a journey, before you even think about doing a renovation, you get 3 contractors in there. And you always three, I think, is more than enough. Some people get four, some people get five. Two is never really enough because you always need the tiebreaker opinion, right? So I think that three would be the sweet spot for me, but get the three in there where you could have a proper estimate of what it would cost to do this renovation. Because the last thing you want to do is to take on a renovation and once you start, you start. There's no, you know what? Let's close the walls back up and forget about this. The walls are open now. We find a problem. It's falling into the budget, right? But doing your proper due diligence is vital when it comes to renovations.
Hmm. We find in renovations that everyone underestimates time and cost,
Right.
and they overestimate. They're just too optimistic. You budget for what you want it to be, not what it actually is going to be.
Yep.
And then you need to add more time onto that because the time is the killer. The money is killer too, but the time is the killer.
I agree with that. And, I always say whether it's myself, my team, or, clients that we're working with, I say the thing is, when we're looking to renovate a rental unit, take off your homeowner lens and put on your landlord lens.
Hmm.
See, in your property, you would add granite countertops and you would add, hardwood floors. But in a rental property, arborite countertops and vinyl flooring does well because the rental value is the rental value. So if
Hmm.
a two-bedroom unit in your area, in your market, is $1,800 a month, it's going to be $1,800 a month whether you put granite countertops or arborite, whether you put hardwood oak floors or vinyl.
Right.
And this is what I have to I see a lot of people do. They get too emotionally invested in their renovation because they want to. I understand, if you would live in one of your rental units, then yes, a tenant would. But when it comes to
Hmm.
investment cost to rental value, putting a countertop that's made of granite versus arborite won't get you more money, unfortunately.
And see, my with my construction management hat on, I'm thinking instantly going, okay, what about logistics to get those materials there? Arborite is probably way more readily available. And so
I
sometimes
agree.
turning the unit, I mean, I think we can agree turning the unit is one of the costliest things. I love your example of the 2 months and then paying the rental commission on a vacant unit.
Yeah.
But if you have to do a renovation in the middle of all that, which sometimes happens, then you also have to get the materials there, right? You have to get the contractors there. Yeah, it's there's also a timing bit too. It's not just there's money, but the timing part is there too. Oh, that's
And
crazy.
And
Yeah.
that's where the good people come in play because people are one of the most. It was funny because I was saying this to a partner of mine last week, actually. I say, people are one of the most valuable resources today. It goes, or
Hmm.
one of the least, depending on the type of people you have. So if you have good people, keep them happy, right? And getting good people in, contractors. And I do business with a lot of people that I've done business with for the past
Mm.
3 to 10 years because I know they work well. So when I have a project, I like to say, Jennifer, here's the key, and know that you know the timeline and that it will get completed.
Hmm.
Otherwise, if I have to micromanage, it'll defeat the purpose and take away from something else. And the problem with contractors is you need to make sure they stick to their timelines because you
Hmm.
mentioned too, the time, if it's a 5 week renovation that takes 10 weeks,
Right. That's a problem.
that falls into your costs, right?
Yeah. Oh
So,
my goodness. It was great talking with you as we were preparing for this episode, and you had said something that was really interesting. You said when you've got landlords and the listeners to this podcast,
yeah.
they're educating themselves, and he said you're going to pay no matter what. So if you're going to pay, what do you tell me more about what you said because it was really educational. I really liked it.
Yeah. I'll give you a great, I'll give you the example that I had used actually when I had that conversation is I had connected with a landlord recently, and I always ask everybody, whether you're a new investor, or someone looking to get into real estate or thinking about it, I say, well, how educated are you on the subject? And this particular person said, not educated at all. And I said, well, thanks for your honesty, because the mistake that I see a lot of people make is they don't educate themselves properly before venturing out. You see,
Hmm.
I got into real estate as a real estate agent and a property manager before becoming an investor and a landlord. So I had the luxury of educating myself before embarking on this investment journey by myself. Whereas I see people do it the opposite. They buy a property and they say, okay, how do I manage it? When property management is a huge portion of being a landlord. So I always recommend that no matter who you are, where you are, educate yourself because you're going to pay for education one way or another. Whether that comes in the form of buying a property and making every mistake in the book, or hiring a company, hiring a coach, hiring a mentor to teach you and fast track you. It'll cost you time and it'll cost you money, but how painful that cost has to be is on you. So
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Giancarlo, your journey and your practical wisdom is so valuable for landlords at any stage, whether it's a newbie, it's a nugget landlord, or somebody that's in a pickle. Thanks for sharing your perspective with us. If a listener is interested in contacting you and if they want to have a bigger conversation with you, learn more,
yeah.
how would they get a hold of you?
I'm most active on Instagram. So if you
Okay,
search up Carangelo Real Estate, Carangelo Real Estate on Instagram, you'll see my profile with a little blue check there. Send me a message, and I always respond to all of my messages, sometimes within 24 hours, sometimes within 48 hours. And my profile also has my link tree, which will allow you to book a brainstorming call with me via
love
Zoom.
it. Love it. Absolutely. Any parting thoughts?
Um, Parting thoughts. I think that one thing that I learned that if I could share with the listeners, when it comes to your goals and your investment goals, everything is possible. Limiting beliefs and fears that are projected onto you by others are a reflection of that person. So
Hmm,
if you believe that you could do it, then you can do it. I will close by saying this. I am a high school dropout, and nobody thought that I would be able to become a real estate investor, property manager, let alone build a portfolio. So if there's one thing that I taught myself is that block out all the noise, and if you believe it, you could achieve it. So I think that anyone who might have a little bit of imposter syndrome or a little bit of doubt, and it's oftentimes brought on by external factors, needs to really understand that anything they want to do is possible as long as they put forth the hard work.
love it. Love it. Wonderful. Great note to end on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for